My name is Frode Nordahl. I'm a senior engineer in the OVN team at Canonical. Today I'm going to pitch some ideas about how we could go about managing our physical networks. Let's start with some history. So OpenFlow was conceived back in 2008. And as you can see from the vintage clip art from the spec, it was originally envisioned to control physical switch hardware. Since then, OVS and OVN has been a proving ground for OpenFlow in virtual networks, and it has developed into be a truly distributed architecture with secure communications, and it's highly scalable. Also, all of the components are in efficient code with small footprint, which is suitable to put in confined spaces. In the software data center world today, we have mastered the art of repeatable deployments of complex software. We can deploy any combination at will, and it will work the same every time. What we don't have is the same capability for the physical network. And I believe the next frontier is to do that. Its complexity is ever increasing. But what would it mean to do that? Does it mean that the deployment tooling would need to know about the quirks of every closed hardware software ecosystem on the planet? Does it mean teaching the deployment tooling about the current physical network configuration paradigms? You know, like generating BGP configuration and stuff like that. And what we see is that there is an increasing need for integration between the workload running on your servers and the physical network to do things like anycast load balancing, blood detection, etc. What we have in front of us today is a shift in integration point for intervendor compatibility. Traditionally, each switch vendor provides a proprietary hardware and software, and they agree on standard protocols so that they can talk together. But today, what we actually could do is install, standard Linux distributions on a top-of-rack switch. It could leverage standard interfaces to the switch hardware to offload flows into the ASICs or the P4 chip or whatever you have on there. And if you saw our presentation yesterday about the SmartNIC DPU port binding with OVN, this has already begun. The SmartNIC DPU is in reality just a small 2-port switch, and we are putting OVS and OVN on it already today. And let's look at a comparison between some of the OpenFlow controllers which are meant for the physical hardware. The most pertinent gap I see is that none of them have a truly distributed design. That meaning putting the OpenFlow controller on the switch itself. Now, why is that so important? If you look at the flow rules, we have this one, actions equals controller, and having that means that the OpenFlow controller is in the data path. It needs to be on the switch to ensure that stuff actually works. Having the controller on the switch is also very useful for partial outages, when the controller could reprogram parts of the switch without having contact with the central office. And if you look at the bare metal provisioning systems, they are starting to look a lot like the CMSs we are used to work with already. So wouldn't it be great if OVS and OVN started to implement features for managing physical switches? We would love to hear your thoughts on the topic, and do reach out on the mailing list and let's discuss.
Let's thank Frode for his talk. Frode, would you like to come on screen and talk to us about your talk?
Hello.
Hello. So we don't have questions posted yet. People can post them, So this is a topic that's dear to my heart. The idea of making networking hardware more programmable, more friendly, and more vendor independent. The issue that I've seen with it is that the traditional networking vendors just aren't very interested in it. It seems like they would much rather produce sort of special purpose solutions. Do you have any ideas on how to handle things at sort of the vendor level?
So I've seen the same as you described here, and as I started the talk, I heard of OpenFlow like 13 years ago, and I was really enthusiastic about it. At that point, I was running a large network, and I was being able to have more control of what I have in my network would be really useful. And as you say, the traditional vendors have really held that back as much as they can. But what changes it for me is, during this OVS con, almost all of the talks are about hardware offload in some shape or form. And some of the vendors that do that, they also produce top-of-rack switches. And those same vendors would be, I would think, would be very interested in doing things like this. And then as I see that there are some standard software distributions appearing, like Sonic and things like that. So that tells me that there is a market for this now, and there is actually hardware that lets you do it. When thinking about automating these switches, it feels very cumbersome to me if our systems were to program things into PGP configuration, and then I really want to skip that part and just go straight to the OpenFlow. And the reason why I want to speak to this conference about it is that OVS and OVN has very generic APIs. So on the surface, you could probably do this today, and it will kind of work. But OVN does not have any of the physical world problems today. We don't deal with multiple connection from leaves to spines and stuff like that. So that means that we will probably need to add special handling for those types of things. So I guess my hope with this, and this is a question to the community, would you accept patches if someone suddenly started to add features like that, or what would you think about it? Do you think it's crazy, or do you want to work with us on it? I guess that's my pitch here.
Well, that's definitely an exciting question. OVN and the systems that we sort of based it on don't think much about the physical world, because we had a hard time. We originally wanted to work with physical world systems like switches and so on, but what we discovered was that it was hard to get them that we could control, and if we insisted on having those, then we would have fewer users because they'd have to replace all of their hardware. So adding that sort of support in over time seems like a reasonable approach to me, and I wish luck along these directions.
Thank you. And you have a very good point about the compatibility with the old world. That's probably why it hasn't happened yet, because people always have that switch that is 15 years old and still forwarding packets. But on the other hand, how the networking world looks like today, it has turned into a cloud computing game in my world. So we should be able to. People are building brand new data centers with all new equipment. So we should be able to do this if we convince them. So let's see how it goes. And,
So we have a late breaking question in here from
Okay,
Mike Patrick, who says Juniper switches run an OS based on BSD and already have an OpenShift plugin. Has anyone tried running OVN on that gear? Do you happen to know anything about that, Frode?
I don't know about that specifically, so I wouldn't know how to answer that. But if they give access to the operating system and the switch hardware, we could probably do stuff like that. That would be pretty cool.
Okay, thank you. And perhaps someone else has a more specific answer that they'll share in the chat. So let's thank Frode one more time.